Hi, I'm Marcia Lehman, and I'm a Knox County Master Gardener. This morning I'm at the home of another Master Gardener, and we are going to do some touch-up pruning on lavender. If these plants look familiar, then you probably watched the lavender pruning video that we did back when these plants were dormant. And in the handout, we're using the same handout, but in that handout we said, you know, lavender is one of those plants that needs to be pruned twice a year. The first time is late winter, early spring as it's coming out of dormancy. And the second time is after all the flowers are spent. And so I'm out here, there are absolutely no bees, no butterflies, no little good bugs flying around. So it's time to do the summer cleanup of lavender. And basically what that entails is removing all these flowering spikes. So this is a job. You can definitely use your hand pruners, and they're sanitized. But this morning I've actually brought along my little snips for doing this. And you can do this a couple of ways. One is you can grab a whole clump of these, come in and do that. But that leaves a few stubs. As long as that's kind of the same height as the rest of the plant, you can get away with that. Now, if you're really particular, you can go one at a time and take them down a little further. But what I'm going to do, since there's actually two parts to this summer cleanup, is I want to get as many of these removed as possible. So I'm going to take them in a clump. And then when I get the flowers removed, then the second part of the summer pruning is to do a little touch-up to get the shape restored to where we want. So I'm going to stop the camera. I'm going to continue to remove flower stems, and then we'll come back and do the general shaping of the lavender plant overall. We have removed all the flower stems, and if you were to look really closely, you would see there are still some stubs, but they don't stick up above the rest of the plant. So we've cleaned up 2 or 3 plants here just to give you a really clear view. Whoops, missed one. You'll always find another one. And now, part 2 of this is to do some shaping if the plant needs it. And we're going to have to reposition the camera so that you can start to see some of what I see. But before we move the camera, keep in mind from the dormant pruning that when we do this shaping, we always want to keep at least 2 to 3 inches of green growth on the tip of something. If you cut back into where it's just woody material, you're not going to grow any green on the end of the woody stuff. So always keep 2 to 3 inches of green growth when you're shaping back. And you get to decide how to shape them. In this case, we have quite a few plants here together, and so we're not exactly going to make a hedge out of it. We do still want to keep some rounded shape. But if your plants are further apart, then you'd want to get them in a nice mound, make sure the bottom is wider than the top so that it gets sunlight. And then, yeah, we'll move the camera and try and give you a shot of what this looks like down in the middle. So this is our pile of flower stems that we've removed from roughly 3 plants. So if you've got a lot of plants, don't be surprised if you end up with a pretty sizable pile of flower stems. Now let's turn the camera around and we'll work on shaping the lavender and taking a look at some of the dead wood. Okay, so I'm pulling this apart so that you can get a little bit of a view of what we see in the middle. And you see a fair amount of dead wood with then, you know, green on the last 8 inches. That's good. But I'm guessing that these plants are probably 5 years old. And my research indicates that, yeah, lavender may last 7 years, maybe a little longer if you take really, really good care of it. I mean, just pampering it all the time. So one of the things I'm looking for is I do see a little bit of dead, just brown with nothing, and they tend to be spindly little things because they were way down in the center of the plant. So any of that, but again, you come up and here's a spindly little thing with just 3 inches or so of growth on it. But at the moment, I'm just focused on pulling out some dead and actually trying to find where one plant ends and another plant starts. And of course, there's another flower stem. And okay, so here's a candidate. It just broke off. Mostly dead with a couple little shoots at the end. That will help us thin out the middle a bit. And there's a magnolia behind here, so there's magnolia leaves and a magnolia flower pod. But, you know, I've kind of pulled this apart now. So the shape, it already has a bit of a mound shape. If I were going to clean up this plant, I would probably focus on a couple of really, really low-lying branches that if you want to propagate, you can do that. Otherwise, I would trim. So I'm going to take off. Yeah. Again, this is in the back. You can't really see where I'm cutting, but always cut back to a branch node. And I've got nice shape there. As I come around, there's a flower stem that needs to go a little shorter. Sometimes you just need to move some branches around. You can often clean off dead things with just your fingers. But yeah, there's some more dead stuff. Again, always remove the dead stuff. It helps you to see a little better. I've taken a little bit out of the middle, not a whole lot, but we still have the mounded shape. And the little bit that I took out has opened it up, so we should get a little more sunshine and airflow into the center of the plant. So again, if you wanted to come in and kind of perfectly, you know, mound it, clean up a few more little tips, cutting back to a branch, a node. You can do that if you're that patient. Not really necessary. I would say we're done with that plant. So I'm going to stop at that. I'm happy with the basic mound shape. I thinned it out a little bit in the middle. So the summer pruning tune-up focuses on getting those spent flower heads off. Those are now gone. And then doing a little bit of reshaping, pulling apart, taking some dead stuff out of the middle, and then it will get its next hard pruning next spring as it's coming out of dormancy, and the primary focus there is to remove winter kill. So again, as I said in the beginning, lavender is one of those plants. It's not particularly long-lived. 7 years is, you'll probably get 7 years. You may get a little longer if you really take good care of them. But they are a plant that needs to be pruned twice a year, once when dormant, and then the second time after flowering. So that's part 2. That's the summer pruning of lavender. Hope you learned something today. Thank you for joining us.